Hey all, it's Jeffrey, and I've been a bit under the weather this past week, so instead of what we planned, we're going to re-air an interview with Abby McEnany, the star of Work in Progress on Showtime. This originally aired on the Luminary app when the show first premiered, and it is now back for its second season. Abby is the creator and star of the series, a self-described fat queer dyke. And I think you're going to love hearing from her as much as I did. So please enjoy. You know, I'm sure it exists, but I think this is the first time I've seen a butch woman be the lead of a TV show.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. It's funny because I'm always hesitant to be like, yeah, it's never been done before. And then everybody comes out, are you fucking kidding me? You didn't know about that? So like, yeah, I think it is rare, I would say. I think a lot of it's like older and fat and masculine and queer. Like, I think that's kind of new that they gave me the opportunity to be the lead, you know? Yeah. I always like, okay, well, maybe I can be in a supporting role in, something. So this is just a dream,
You mentioned your age. I think it's kind of moving actually to see somebody at your age who is, gender nonconforming.
Yeah.
Because I think that we've inadvertently created this narrative that young people have created gender nonconformity.
Yeah.
And that somehow like they invented it themselves and it's brand new.
Right.
And that's not the case.
Well, you know what? That's so interesting. I think that's correct. It's not the case. However, what I find beautiful about it is that if somebody's going to be gender non-binary or gender non-conforming or whatever, like they won't be the only one. And like it won't be weird. And so like I think everything is I call it a queer wonderland. Like when in one of the episodes, my boyfriend takes me to this queer party. And so when we were writing it, I was like, so it's like this queer wonderland. It's like queers of all different sexual identities, gender identities, all races, abilities, sizes. It's just like this like wealth of openness and stuff. And I think, so I think it's exactly right. It wasn't invented by youthful queers, but boy, is it being championed. How about that? It's been championed and just like everything seems, I mean, again, this is from a very privileged point of view. And like, I'm from, I'm live in a city and I'm like, I feel like I am embraced. I know like queer places and stuff like that. So I just want to say like, I know I'm very lucky by that, but it is embraced by that. And it wasn't as much in the olden days of the 80s and 90s.
I mean, like maybe you are privileged, but you also do deal with like being misgendered.
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah. When I say, I just want to say like, I just want to be very aware that even with everything that that I deal with as a person, like I still have amazing, I don't want to be like, oh, because there's a clip that they've been showing in a trailer that says, my life's worse than everybody else's or my life's harder. And I was like, I hope people know that this is like, I don't really believe that. That's my character at a really low point and not being a very good person,
Yeah, of
That's
course.
what I mean. Yeah.
No, totally.
So, yeah, I mean, certainly there's been a lot of crap. There's still a lot of crap.
With like the example of being misgendered, which we see in the TV show, how often would you say that happens to you?
Well, when my depression's really bad, it happens less because I don't leave the house as much. Classic. I would say it happens anywhere. I mean, sometimes 7 times a week or 4 times. I mean, I don't know. It happens all the time. Yeah. And I have to say, like, generally, like I want to be masculine presenting, right? Like, so I understand when people are like, oh, sir. And I'm like, oh, and they hear my voice or I say, oh, I'm not a sir. And it's like, oh, sorry. I'm like, I don't care. It's all about respect.
A lot of this reminds me of the SNL character Pat, which you talk about in the show a lot.
Yes.
In the show, your character says that Pat made your life a living hell.
Yes.
Just for the younger generation, I think that character's been lost on people. Could you just explain who that was?
Sure. So Pat was a character, and the premise of the character is that Pat is very aware of their gender, but nobody else knows what Pat's gender is. And so the way that it was set up on SNL is that the premise is like, oh, isn't that hilarious? Like, is that a man or a woman? And that's hilarious.
And a little bit gross.
Oh, for sure, gross. For sure. That's what, yeah. But, and I have to say, like, at the time, I mean, I thought Pat was hilarious, right? Like, I was like, woo. I mean, also, it was a long time ago and I was younger and I didn't get stuff. But when it started turning into something that ruined my life was when I started being called Pat. Once I like started to be like more embracing my like my queerness and my masculine dress and stuff like that. And I'm fat and like I have like now I have really gray hair, but it used to be dark and short, but like whatever. And I think people will be like, oh yeah, I bet it was like a lot of straight guys in Lincoln Park that like, which is, a very, like, it's not just them. I was called Pat by a lesbian in a lesbian bar in the 90s. And it's like, wow. Especially back then, it was really important. I mean, it's still important to find safe space now, but just as society, people are more and more accepting where I live. But boy, that's heartbreaking. So then, that really made me think like the idea of a lesbian community, that's a misnomer because like I can't even go to a safe space and feel safe. I'm being insulted by the way I look and how I'm presenting myself. It's like, are you kidding me?
Has that changed in lesbian spaces?
Well, I have to say lesbian spaces are disappearing.
That's a great point.
It is. There used to be a bunch of lesbian bars in Chicago and I can't name one. Also, I just have to say, I don't identify as a lesbian anymore. I identify as queer, dyke, or a queer woman. So there are people like, lesbians don't date trans men. I'm like, I know, I'm queer. Anyways, I just had to get that out there. Yeah, there aren't any lesbian spaces that I can find, or they're disappearing, and that's horrible. And then a lot of queer spaces have lost some of the safety. I don't know the safety, but it's just like, one time, my friend and I, Kareem, were at one of the best bars in the world. It's called Big Chicks in Chicago. I don't know if you've ever been there. It's amazing. What's up, Big Chicks? It seemed like one time these group of straight folks came in and like these people were like treating us like zoo animals. Like, oh my God. Sometimes like we can't even have like a sacred space of safety.
I want to go back to Pat before we move on.
Oh my gosh, right.
Just because that was such a widely known character that had a cultural significance that surprises me. It was even mentioned in the recent Supreme Court case.
Can you believe? I saw that. I was like, what is happening? Yeah.
And so Julia Sweeney, who played Pat, she's on your TV show playing Julia Sweeney.
Yes.
Did you have a backup plan in case she didn't want to do the show?
Well, it was funny because Tim Mason, who's my co-creator and co-writer, so in my storytelling show, it started like, Julia Sweeney's Pat made my life a living hell. That's how the story started. And we were going to include like that story, like the idea. And Julia Sweeney lived in the North Shore of Chicago at the time. And he was like, well, let's just write her in. I'm like, we're never going to get her. He's like, no, let's just write her in. And then like a month before we're going to shoot, we're like, we better reach out to her. I was like, oh yeah. And I didn't Tim was kind of like, well, we're going to have to rewrite a lot. I'm like, it's really not that big of a rewrite because we were just for the pilot, right? She said yes right away. She is the most generous, loving person. We are dear friends. It's funny, I love her so much. She's so amazing, has given so much to the project. And what I love about it is that we don't see eye to eye on everything, we do not see eye to eye on certain things. And I have to say, that's fantastic in a way because the thing about social media that really bugs me is that people are immediately villainized or called evil because of a misstep. And some missteps are on purpose and some missteps are a mistake. And a lot of people are willing to learn and hear wow, I fucked up. Tell me what can I want to be a better person. I want to be a better person. I want to become less classist, less racist, less misogynist, less fatphobic, less homophobic, less transphobic. I'm all the phobics. I'm all those, I'm all that stuff, right? But I think in the current climate that there's not a lot of opportunity for conversation and learning and having discourse and conversations and it being okay to not exactly agree with every single person. And that doesn't make somebody a villain or evil, And I think all this shit that happens online, things are people are immediately branded a certain thing. And I have to say, I fuck up all the time. And I want to be in a place that that I can learn and continue to become a better person. I'm open to that.
And you fuck up all the time, and so does everybody else.
Exactly, right. Right.
And with the character Pat,
we go back. I'm sorry, I keep on changing.
No, why are you apologizing?
No, I don't know, because I always do. Okay, I'm moving on.
Pat did come out in a different time, and I think it's so interesting that now, were there to be a character on TV like Pat, where we didn't know the gender, the next follow-up line would be like, hey, what are your pronouns?
Exactly right.
That cultural understanding didn't exist.
It didn't exist, and also it wouldn't be the joke. The whole premise of that was oh my God, isn't that person a freak? Because, oh my gosh, we don't know what to say around this person. And so it was a freak. It wasn't a human being.
Oh, because that joke actually wouldn't exist anymore.
It wouldn't exist.
If we said we don't know their gender. There wouldn't be a punchline.
There's no punchline. It'd be like, hey, my pronouns are she, her. What are your pronouns?
That is a big change.
It's just it just exists. Or it would exist in a very unappealing way.
That's a great point.
You know what I mean?
When you say that you now describe yourself as a queer dyke,
Yes.
there's a line in the TV show that I'm not a lesbian because lesbians are old women.
Yeah.
I was trying to figure out, like, how much of that is a joke for something you actually used to think?
Okay. And I find identity fascinating.
Me too.
And I think, I love, especially like for me, and it's only in like the last, I don't know, 3 years, the idea, or 4 years, I can't remember, the idea of fluidity, like gender fluidity, sexuality fluidity, all that stuff. I think that's such a beautiful idea. And I love that idea, like, you can be fluid. It doesn't matter. Like, things can change. And so my identity, when I came out, of course, classic 22-year-old, I'm a bisexual. And I'm not against bisexuals. I just don't identify as one. I think bisexuals get a bad rap. And then I never felt like, like a lesbian, because I still was attracted to some men. Okay, so then I defined myself as a lesbian. And then I dated this wonderful woman, Liz. She was 11 years younger than me. And I referred to us as lesbians in some comment. She's like, I'm not a lesbian. Lesbians are old women. I'm like, what? Okay, because I was like, I can't give her more evidence that I'm so much older than her. So then I was like, okay. And also, I think the word dyke is very powerful, and I feel like dykes can do whatever the fuck they want. And also, lesbians can. I did this piece in my show about identity, right? And I was like, also, this is how I see it. Anything you say now is like, that's not what lesbians are. So I find lesbian, to me, is also not what I am. But anyways, dyke seems like you can do whatever the fuck you want. Then I started dating a young trans man. And if I was still referred to as a lesbian, I'm totally negating Alex's gender. Alex isn't a woman. Alex is a man. So then I was like, okay, I'm queer. Like, I made up queer dyke for myself. I'm like, I'm queer. I'm dyke identified. Makes sense to me. People are like, what does that mean? I'm like, makes sense to me. But so those two things came from very specific things. But yeah, because Liz was like, lesbians are old women. I'm like, oh God, like, oh shit.
That's really funny.
Yeah, I mean, it's just ridiculous. Yeah.
And in the show, we do see you dating a trans man,
yes,
played by Theo Germaine.
Yes.
Theo is non-binary. The character is a trans man.
Yes.
The character also presents a little gender nonconforming.
Yes.
And I think that's so powerful to see gender nonconformity, be it a butch woman or a non-binary person or a trans man, to see that being sexualized. Because, I think we sexualize trans women only, but when it comes to gender nonconformity, we don't see people expressing like sexual desire.
Yeah, it is funny because Theo was our first actor that came in to audition, and we had been working on this project for about 2 years. And the second Theo left, we were like, whew. This is a lot about Abby's learning. We use Chris's pronouns are he, him. Theo's pronouns are they, them. Now also he, him. But, it's like, it didn't matter if this character was identified as he, him, or they, them, or whatever. Like, okay, so we changed all of that to fit the person, because it was like, we have this opportunity to show real queers and to give the beautiful community that we are part of an opportunity to be like in a show that they haven't had the opportunity to be themselves before on screen. And I think that to me has been really probably the most powerful thing,
Yeah. And we see one scene with you and Theo's character talking about having sex.
Yes.
And the character is saying like what body parts they feel
yes.
comfortable with you touching,
yes.
how they feel comfortable with you describing certain
yes.
body parts. And it was one of the most frank discussions of sexuality with trans people I've seen on screen. And I just thought it was so important because you are modeling a response, which is like, okay, great.
Right.
I don't need to touch your chest.
Right.
Which is like no pressure.
Right.
When I think that people think there's so much pressure having sex with trans people.
Right. And a lot of that is like, that was my experience. And I thought it was so powerful. Like when I was with my boyfriend at the time, Alex, like it was just, it's like, okay, great. It's like, okay, it's like right on. Like this makes, this doesn't change how I feel about you. It's not going to change like how we have, like it's not going to change how I feel about having sex with you or you having sex with me. You know what I mean? And it was just this thing is like set out boundaries, set out respect, and then it lets down all these like fears, And I just think, yeah.
And in that case too, like with that example, the show functions as the antidote to Pat on SNL.
Yeah, exactly right.
And to like the history of trans representation, which is a man kissing a trans woman and then vomiting.
Right. Exactly right. And also we wanted to show, because in the pilot when I misgender Chris, and I was like, oh, I haven't been out with an attractive woman in a long time. And Chris says, actually, I'm a trans man. And I go, well, I haven't been out with an attractive trans man in ever. In real life, this happened over email with me and Alex. I was like, okay. We didn't want to be like, oh my gosh, what does this mean? It's a human being. I'm very attracted to them. It's just kind of a fact. It's like, and it doesn't matter. I think somebody asked me once, and I can't remember where they're from, but it was like, tell me how a relationship between a lesbian and a trans man works. And of course, that's misidentifying me. I was like, how does that work? And I was like, it's two human beings who are into each other. It's just weird. It's like, what do you mean, how does it work? Like, what is, like, it's two human beings that are into each other. You know what I mean? I think he was like, what do you do? You know? And it was just like, we're human beings. Like, what do you mean? You know?
and so like the show, if they watch it, then they see, right?
Right. And I think, it would be funny because like Tim, Lily, and I, we'd be in the writing room and it was just the three of us that wrote because we started writing right away. We didn't have like a finalized deal or anything, but we're like, we got to go because we know we're going to go fast. And sometimes we'd be writing, we're like, wait, does this sound like a TED Talk? Because we just wanted to show real life, you know? We didn't want to be like, this is the way it is. And also, I have to say, some people won't like what I'm saying, right? And that's okay. Like, I'm sure I got stuff wrong. And I bet like some people think I got stuff right, and I think I got it right. They won't like it. That's okay, you know?
But that's why I love seeing you misgender this character, because it's like, not even the queers all get it right all the time.
Right, exactly right. Even in that scene, like when in the charades, when they're like, who's the man? Abby's new girlfriend? And it's just like, that's not coming from hate. It's just coming from not knowing trans people and not knowing what the language is, you know? And it's just like, okay, and these are friends of mine, and they're like, okay, this is new for everybody. We're going to figure it out. And that was kind of how it was, you know?
Yeah. While writing the show, did you ever debate whether or not to change the character's name from Abby to a different character name?
It's hilarious. We probably should have debated it because the character's name is Abby McEnany. Oopsies.
It's your first and last name.
Yeah, you know, that's, I don't know if that was well thought out. There was a lot of other stuff on my mind, Jeff.
I asked that because people have an issue separating out actors from the characters they play, let alone actors from the characters they play, that it's their own life experience with the same name.
Right. I know. It's so funny. I was like, really could have thought of that more. I just think it was funny because like the show was born out of this storytelling show, which was like 55 minutes of real life stories for me, right? And I think it was just in our mind like a natural progression to like, now I'm like, oh God. I mean, it's hilarious. I did change like my family's names. Nailed it. We changed a lot of stuff about my family. And
it's so funny that you describe yourself as a mess. Because for me, there's like a disconnect there because what you were able to accomplish with Work in Progress, you co-created it with Tim Mason, your co-creator. Yep. You wrote it, produced it, got it funded, shot it, got accepted to Sundance, got Lily Wachowski on board. She's one of the Wachowski siblings from The Matrix.
The best.
Then you got a Showtime series pickup. That was really fast. And then also on top of that, you created something really good.
To me, that's really kind. Thank you.
I mean that.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
And so to me, like to be able to accomplish all that, I don't get how someone can be a mess.
Well, you know, I think that I come by, you know, I just think, you know, I haven't had a career I've been improvising since like I was 24, 25, and I haven't ever, you know what I mean? I'm just saying like, that's what I mean.
You were very well known in the Chicago improv space though.
I mean, like when you improvise for a long time there, people know who you are. And also I think like, it's really hard for me to say like, yeah. I think also when I say it like a walking mess, like I always get out of the car and I spill coffee. I'm like, well, I'm glad I'm not getting my picture taken, you know? And I get on a plane and I'm like dropping my water bottle. I mean, I am a clumsy motherfucker. You know what I mean? I just like, I'm a mess, but I'm okay. You know, I just think like, also when you put it out there, it's just like, all right, I don't think I'm anything I'm not, you know what I mean? And I think it was so great when we got to pitch it, people had seen the pilot, right? So I walked into these rooms and I didn't have to pretend to be anybody I wasn't because they saw this screeching like, I don't know what I'm doing woman in a 24-minute pilot. And I walk in and it's not like, I know exactly what you're talking about. I was like, what does that mean? You know, and I'm next to Lily Wachowski, who's a fucking warrior. She is beautiful person, a warrior, my supporter, my backbone. She's powerful. She gives zero crap about how crap works. She's like, I'll speak my mind. And I don't know, it's been like, so that was just crazy. And I would be like in these meetings, like, I can't believe I should be way more nervous, you know? And that was a gift, you know, it's been a gift that I haven't had to pretend I was somebody else.
I guess when you make a TV show with a character with your exact name, somebody who, you know, talks about all the issues she's facing, someone who kills her therapist inadvertently in the first scene, maybe there's not a lot to hide.
I know, that's true. That's true. And it's funny, like I was talking yesterday about Hannah Gadsby and I find her just That, Nanette was just the most powerful piece of art I'd seen. And what she says about she refuses to use self-deprecating humor anymore. And that to me, I'm going to get misty talking about, like, that to me is so powerful. And I'm like, oh, I'm doing a disservice because I'm very self-deprecating, but a lot of that, I come by it by setting up safety, right? Like, I've always been fat. I've always been like conventionally unattractive and loud. And I've never fit, and I'm always in the way and stuff. So like, there's a lot of like comedy and self-deprecation that sets me up. So I protect, it's like setting up an armor. I'm working on it. I'm working on it. And I also, when I talk about like, I have no shame about like my mental illness or my gender identity or my sexuality. And I have immense shame about being fat, like immense. And like, I look at Lindy West and Roxane Gay and Adie Bryant, who I used to perform with, who's so beautiful and so powerful and just so funny. And I look at those women, I'm like, you are so smart and brave, and I just wish I was like that, and I'm not. And like, when we do the show, I'm like, oh God, like, I know I'm doing a disservice, like, by like worrying about my fat. I'm just telling the truth, right? Like, my truth. And my goal is to hopefully show people out there struggling that there's a life without shame out there. And I'm not saying I'm living it, but that's the goal, right?
You putting the show out there with this, as you say, a fat character who's the lead role, that will do enough to like help other people, even if you don't believe for yourself.
Exactly right. And I think really, like, there is a fat, gray-haired, masculine woman who is the lead of a show. Like, that is bonkers. That opportunity is revolutionary. And with Lily, like, and the love character, it was with a trans person. Like, that to me, I'm able to actually, that's the first time I've said it. Other people have said it, but that's revolutionary.
It is. And when I said earlier that like we've sexualized somebody who's gender nonconforming, we've also sexualized this butch fat woman.
Well,
and
I'm like, I don't know about that.
No, I mean that actually.
Yeah, I know you do, but I'm not there yet. But yeah, okay.
Yeah. And again, you don't have to be.
I know, you're like, I know, this is my show, Abby. I know.
No, yeah. I'm just saying you don't have to agree with that. But like,
I know.
You've put this character in a romantic situation on screen.
For sure, yes.
Yeah, it's like very empowering for other fat people.
Yes.
Because like Hollywood doesn't present fat people at the percentage that they exist in the world.
Right. It's like, yeah, exactly right. They don't. And I think also they don't do that with queer people or older people or like older love interests or... Yeah, they don't. It's like hidden. And I think the show's messy and real. I can't tell you how lucky I am. I mean, I always be like, I'm the luckiest motherfucker on the face of the planet. And I stand by that. Like, this is unreal. It's unreal.
And that is our show. As always, if you enjoyed the interview, please leave a comment on Apple Podcasts and help us spread the word with a tweet, a Facebook post, an Insta story. Doing things like that is the #1 way you can help our show continue to grow. We did a big listener survey a couple of months ago, and the #1 thing that I learned is that the majority of listeners discovered our show through personal recommendation. So if you've done that, thank you so much. And if you haven't, hey, it is the perfect time to start. We're brought to you by The Advocate Magazine in partnership with GLAAD. I'm Jeffrey Masters on Twitter and Instagram @JeffMasters1. I'll see you next week. Bye.